This is SoulCharge, the podcast for women leaders to take the highest level of ownership of their power to create results now. I'm your host, Stacy B. Let's dive in. Hello and welcome back, podcast listeners, to another SoulCharge episode. Today's episode is all about your leadership toolkit, because here is the truth that we all know, that bringing aligned energy into leadership, in other words, taking the deep work to lead from the inside out and actually practically applying it in leadership, can be the opportunity that is most available for you to step into mastery. Because I think that in our clients' journey, and in my own journey personally, that has been sort of the tell-all, right? Is where is my mastery as it relates to taking what is happening inside and applying it outside? How do we move away from the patterns and programs that has been our leadership, right? That has been who we are in leadership. How do we move away from that and really step into taking this alignment into application? And so I'm really excited about this series because I'm going to be breaking it down really simply and offering you short bits of guidance and leadership tools so that you can go into your next leadership meeting, so that you can go into your next client meeting, or take it into who you're being when you're leading your team, who you're being when you're thinking of that next level of expansion for yourself and your team and your business, and really taking these values and going deeper in a really practical way. So I'm excited about this. I wanted to kick us off with this episode and really diving into what you must have as a foundational aspect in your leadership to take the inside out into your leadership. The thing that is so critical for you to be leading in an awakened and intentional way in the world is this fundamental piece. Your truth and trusting your truth is the biggest hurdle that I've gone through, that all of our clients have gone through, and that you have to go through and take total ownership of in really leading differently. Because for you to lead differently, you have to leave behind the explanation and worrying about how they're going to receive things, they being your team or your clients or whomever, and being so grounded in your essence, who you are, who you be, and being able to confidently lead from that place. And so I wanted to kick off this series with really diving into this a little bit more and practically talking about trusting yourself. It's such a popular topic right now, right? In leadership and what's going on in the world, is rooting in your truth and what's real for you and what matters for you is something that, especially as women, we've been conditioned to not believe, to doubt first. And what I really want to say to you in this episode is that has to deploy for you to actually have these tools that I'm going to give you in these upcoming episodes, for those tools to take root in the way that they are meant to. And so trusting yourself and understanding what that even means is first. And so I wanted to speak to a few live examples of how this shows up for us as leaders, because I trust that you can see yourself in these stories that I'm going to share. So the first example is I was on a team call and one of our team members was asking about how to explain what she does as she goes out and about, right? And tells the world how she's a part of SoulCharge now and what that looks like. And that kind of fits in the topic of having your one-liner of what you do, or as many of us know it, your elevator pitch. And what's really interesting is, why do we need to have a pitch? Why do we need to have something scripted? Is because at the core, we don't trust that we can lean on ourselves in the moment in a conversation, right? You need those core components, right? That foundation of comprehension of what you're doing to be able to talk about it in the world. But if you notice, and if you're really honest, anytime that you're afraid you're going to fumble over your words, anytime that you don't know what to say, or anytime that you're preparing for something, whether it's to talk about what you're doing or to lead people on the mission you are fulfilling, you can see how not trusting yourself can show up by wanting to write things out before a meeting or script things or outline things. And there's a difference between preparation and that external world and what I'm saying. If you are fully trusting yourself, I am here to tell you that your preparation looks different externally. And the goal of this is to bring your attention to where you're not fully trusting yourself, because you're losing a ton of resources, time, and money and efficiency anywhere where you're not trusting yourself. And so that is an example one, is wherever you're scripting or over preparing or feeling like you need to over deliver on something, you are not trusting yourself to be present with yourself in the moment and know that you are going to deliver and blow people's minds every single time. That is a way of being. You just noticed how I cultivated and reached into my being and confidently said, my experience with myself is that anytime I'm in a conversation, an opportunity to talk about SoulCharge or any of my companies, no matter what is on the table, I trust that I am going to deliver and blow people's minds. Let that be your mantra. Let that be your reality. Let that be your truth, and choose to trust yourself. So that is example one. The next short story that I'll share with you is, I was in a conversation with one of our clients in one of the other companies, and I was chatting with him about what his growth looks like and what's kind of next for him on the horizon. And he described himself as very loyal, as someone that, wants to fulfill on commitments that he has. And he's talking about his potential next move and that changing, or what that would look like, just so you have a little color on that. And one of the things that emerged through that conversation was that he was mistaking loyalty for people pleasing. He was actually mistaking loyalty for approval seeking tendencies and not people's feelings. And so how that comes back to trusting yourself is, wherever that we are sort of assessing our next steps, assessing what's next for us in life and business, and trying to consider other people before we really land on what's true for us, what we want, it's going to be messy. It's going to be coming from a place of sacrifice versus what you truly want. If I'm trying to evaluate how this is going to impact you before I'm clear on my decision, it's actually backwards. We have it backwards. If I am considering the well-being of you before my well-being, as I just shared in this short story, that has it backwards. And what I am reinforcing is that I'm not trusting myself. I'm actually more worried about the experience of the other. And guess what? That's stunting my growth, because I'm not making the bold moves that I know I really need to make. And I'm not being fully self-expressed, this example with this gentleman. And so that trust in yourself, that trust that you are going to stand in your power. And by standing in your power, you're going to effectively lead others. That trust of foundationally not mistaking things like loyalty, but it's people pleasing. At the core of that is, we're using these things as a way to justify decisions or our big moves when actually the thing we need to start with is, do we trust ourselves? And if the answer is no, that's awesome. Start there. Start there with the truth, because here's what I know to be so real is that when I am honest with myself, I can actually grow. When you are honest with yourself, you can actually truly grow, not just symptomatically grow, but grow at the root and be different and really usher your vision to the next level. When we talk about trust in leadership, so often what I see in the women leaders that we work with is so much work going to how someone's going to feel or how we need to present this in such a way versus actually turning the conversation back to ourselves and going, where am I trusting myself and where am I not? Oh, okay. I noticed that I trust myself when I'm talking about these 3 topics. It's when I go into this other territory or this other realm of topics that I get insecure, or I don't trust myself as much, or I notice that I'm trying to make sure everyone involved, understands where I'm coming from, or whatever it may be. And that piece is really where you want to start, right? Which is, where do I trust myself and where don't I trust myself? And then once you're able to identify where you're noticing you're not trusting yourselves, I absolutely promise you that you're going to see themes and trends, and you're going to see that it's usually a couple of areas that you get caught up. It might be when you find yourself having to deliver negative feedback or what you perceive as negative, because let's be honest, all feedback is constructive, positive, and negative. If you find yourself getting sort of wound up or where you're not trusting yourself when you have to deliver negative or less than ideal feedback, that's going to be a great area for growth, because you probably grew up not liking confrontation. And so that's where you get charged and you almost get out of your body. If you notice where we are uncomfortable, we disassociate or we get out of our body, and that's where the trust breaks down. And so once you assess where you see you're strong and where you see you could do some work around trust, then that next step really looks like leaning into and asking yourself, what would it look like if I fully trusted in this area? And a lot of times it's just considering how you want to handle something and trusting that. Because where I see things get messy or clunky with regards to this topic and trusting ourselves in leadership is whenever a leader is considering someone else before being rooted in what they want and how they want to handle it, it's messy. There's not trust there, and it goes sideways. Because the thing is you are going into them first, you second. And it seems so simple. And this is why I love this work so much, it is simple. It is profound. If you take away one thing from this episode, which is, I must commit that I am going to get rooted in what's true for me and what I want first before going into situations. If you just take that, you are going to be eons and light years ahead of leadership, of how leadership is taught. Because if you are going out there first, what's happening is you're not being embodied. You're not being in your body. You're not leading truly from your heart. And that's what this is all about, is returning to your heart in leadership. And that means expressing yourself, right? And how you want to handle things. And so starting with trusting yourself and asking yourself these questions. 1, where do I notice I get caught up? Where do I notice that I trust myself? And where do I notice that I don't as well? The next question, where do I notice with clients or team members that I get triggered the most? And can I see that those moments of when I'm triggered, I'm not in my truth? Or it's a situation that I've compromised myself, whether it's at the beginning of inception, whether it's in the middle, there's some self-compromise. Can you notice that where you're triggered, there is compromise on self? And then the last question is, what would a situation, and go ahead and pick a situation that you've recently navigated that didn't go as well as you wanted, or you wanted it to be held differently. What would it look like if you operated in full trust in that situation? So I'd love for you to reflect on this topic of trust, because these following leadership tools to put in your toolkit are going to only land and be successful in the way that they truly have been designed to be for you if you can see where you are at with your personal trust of self. Because again, if you don't trust yourself, admitting that is truly, on many, many ways, the first and the last step. Because if you can admit the truth, you can build from the truth. You can grow from the truth. And that, my friend, is what this is all about, is revealing the truth so that you can remember your power and create everything that you want to. Are you loving SoulCharge? If so, hit the subscribe button, leave a review, and share an episode. We want to bring powerful content to women leaders each week so that women can be unleashed to create the results that they want now. Thanks so much for listening, and we'll see you next week.